Fantastic. Well, hey everyone, this is Chris Fabian with ResourceX, and this is our second edition of the Resource Exchange, which is our attempt to bring the PBB community together, share stories, stories of inspiration, stories of general intrigue, and hopefully share some of the lessons and experiences that you can all take home and get to know a lot of the people who are really helping to make the mission of our work at ResourceX into what it is and carry the movement forward. So really excited for you to be here. This is a live studio audience. Today we have Brad Steckart with us. And Brad, thank you so much for being here on the show. Brad now is the newest employee of ResourceX. We're so thrilled to have him on our team. If Josh Showman is on the line, Josh, thank you so much for helping to bring Brad into the great work of Washington County. And Washington County is one of the greatest success stories in fulfilling as far of the mission as we possibly imagined. And Brad had everything to do with helping make that come to fruition. And we were so fortunate to have the opportunity to invite Brad to become part of our team and made it happen just a few, maybe a month ago or so. Is that about right, Brad?
Yeah, I think not even a month. It's been just under.
Wow, incredible. Well, Brad, as we get started, nice equipment over on your end. Can you tell us a little bit about your setup there?
Yeah. About a year ago, I decided that I wanted to kind of dabble in podcasting a little bit. So I ended up kind of going out and seeing what I could do in making kind of an at-home studio in my spare room. So I had a chance to do that. I got some microphone setups. Oh, I like the cheese background. That's very nice.
Oh, thank you. I also improved my my room setting.
I like it. Yeah. So I got to dabble in the podcasting, and I started a podcast called Wisconservation, talking about conservation issues in Wisconsin. So there's an episode on YouTube right now about freshwater mussels who make lures to lure other fish in to basically spray their babies at the fish, which then bring their babies upstream and reproduce that way. So just some nerdy conservation science.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's that. And then I figured, since we're doing this podcast type interview, I should probably get the podcast equipment out and do it this way. And it sounds great on my end. So it sounds like it's just, it's just me and you. Sounds good.
Same. Well, Brad, we'll get started with just some general questions. One of the things that we're trying to do, everybody at ResourceX, we're pretty avid readers, try to share in latest and greatest of what we're learning about. What is your favorite book and why?
Ooh, okay. So I have a lot of favorite books. So the most recent favorite book that I read and that I've kind of been adhering to is Results That Last by Quint Studer. So that is one that I've kind of been living by. I had a mentor in Waukesha County, Wisconsin. I worked there for a short time, and his name was Dale Shaver. He was the head of the Parks and Land Use Department. He was a really innovative guy, and he really took a nice approach to how he ran his division. And he was a huge fan of Quint Studer. Quint Studer is a guy who he mostly works in healthcare. So he works in like hospital administration mostly. But Dale actually took a lot of his lessons and applied them to local government, which I thought was really interesting and super innovative, especially when it comes to like what Quint calls rounding for outcomes, going around and rounding like how a doctor rounds with patients. He talked about rounding, but, managers going to round with their employees. And so I thought that was a really cool focus. And he also takes a lot in like him and Jim Collins, Good to Great, kind of go hand in hand together really well. So most recently I've been reading Brave New Work because Eric Keck sent it to me very nicely. So I got a shout out to Eric and thank him for that. About halfway through it, and it's really good. And I can see how ResourceX kind of, models off of it. So.
And somewhere in the intersection is upstream mollusk reproduction strategy.
Well, right. And I mean, those are all nonfiction. So like the most fun book that I've read recently is, have you ever read Unbroken by Hillenbrand? It's about a
No.
guy, Louis Zamperini. He was an Olympic runner, and then he went to war. And I actually didn't read this. I listened to it in my car. So, but he was an Olympic athlete, and he went to war in World War II, and he was a bombardier in B-52s, and his plane crashed, and he spent like over 40 days at sea, and just like persevered through it all. And then he got rescued, and then sent to a POW camp. And I mean, his story is just really inspiring. He kept a positive mindset the whole time, and he stayed busy through it all. And they would talk about how to keep their mind busy. They would just describe like meals that they would eat. Like they would describe like reaching for the garlic in the pantry, and every second of preparing a meal, they would cure their hunger that way and kind of keep their mind occupied. So it was pretty cool. Pretty good book.
Your curiosity is gone from rounding the hospital room to mollusks, Jim Collins, Brave New Work Strategy, and bombardiers. Man, what led you to local government? How did you land here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, yeah, as I said before, I mean, I kind of went to school for biology, and I went to school to be a conservation biologist, and I did that. I started out of college and during college as an intern for a nonprofit who did work on aquatic invasive species. So my job was to basically go and educate students about what aquatic invasive species were. Well, it just so happened that a position opened up as I was graduating in Washington County for an aquatic invasive species coordinator part-time for the county. And it was through the Parks Department. So I got hired by the Parks Department, and I was the AIS coordinator. So pretty much a freshwater biologist for a couple of years. And it was a grant-funded position. And so I, wrote grants to keep my job basically at the county, which was a really eye-opening process of how all that funding worked. And, you don't learn that in school as a biologist. You learn that in the field as a person who works for local government. So that kind of opened my eyes to it. And I started asking questions to my department heads like, hey, how do I start doing what you're doing? They're kind of doing the more administrative type of thing. And they suggested that I go and get my Master's of Public Administration. So I went to UW Milwaukee while still working as the AIS coordinator, night classes, and got the MPA. And during that time, I actually worked with Josh Showman, who was in Washington County, and Dale Shaver, the guy who was a Quint Studer fan, to merge the Waukesha County and Washington County AIS programs. So in doing that, I kind of got the taste of how to merge services and kind of take a program and make it better by creating something new and doing it through a couple different governments. So that was really cool. And we ended up having this big freshwater biologist team with like 7 interns and 2 biologists, and it was pretty cool. And it was inspiring to see everyone work together. So so that led to getting my Master's of Public Administration, and then that kind of went over to me just dabbling in the budget and dabbling in finance a little bit. And once I graduated, actually, Josh was integral in creating a position for me as the budget supervisor. Washington County had been thinking about doing some stuff with budget specific for a while. We have a finance department, but no budget department. So this is kind of the transition to kind of start dabbling in some of that more budget-based work. So then he asked me to come on in the finance department, and I was more than happy to. It was a new experience. I was glad. So then for the past 2 years, that's what I've been doing, from biologist to finance guy.
And didn't they? I've heard rumors that that came with a special job position title of some sort.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said anything, man.
Is this what your office looks like?
That's what my office looked like. Yeah, it was actually really far down in the basement. Had to take the elevator down there.
Yeah, we hear they called you Aquaman. That would be pretty cool.
I won an
Aquaman
award.
is like-
I won an award in Washington County called Aquaman, and I don't think I'll ever live it down. It's gonna live with me for the rest of my life.
Very cool. For everybody else on the call, that I'll turn off this funny virtual thing. But there is, as Brad was starting to talk about some of the emerging services, if you picked up GFOA's book, Financial Foundations for Thriving Communities, there's a large chapter on networked enterprises, and Josh's work, Brad's work in creating partnerships and mergers in local government is just completely fascinating. It's pretty groundbreaking work, and definitely one of the reasons we were so excited to have Brad come to our team is to share some of the knowledge of how you made that happen. It's really awesome. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and you got to shout out to Josh, because Josh Showman was just all about, I mean, he's all about finding those partnerships and really seeing where, I mean, you think about local government and how much service is repeated, and it's just amazing to see what you can do as a county and how you can work with your local municipalities and surrounding counties to really create something bigger that is just as effective, if not more, than just what you're doing locally.
Brad, as a segue, could you share a little bit more about Washington County, Wisconsin?
Yeah, definitely. So Washington County is, so if you're thinking of Wisconsin, and you probably would know where Milwaukee is, it's kind of in the southeastern part of the state. Washington County is geographically just above Milwaukee County, so just north. So it's definitely a rural county. The entire county is pretty large, but the population is about 140,000. So it's pretty rural. When you think about Wisconsin farms and you think about cows and cheese and all that stuff, you could definitely picture Washington County. Some rolling fields of corn. Yeah, that's pretty much describes it. But it's great. It's a nice getaway from the city, and it was fun working there. I've always lived in Milwaukee, but then commuted to Washington County, and it's a nice place. So county-wide, there's like 23 departments. We provide police services, mental health services. We had a health department, but through PBB, we no longer have a health department because we merged with another county. And and we've seen steady growth throughout my tenure there. We have certain tax laws in Wisconsin where we have limited amounts we can raise taxes, but even so, the county has managed to lower taxes by almost 10 cents each year since I've been there, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
What do you make of? I know this is a little bit beyond, but just to go one step further, what created this fertile territory for partnerships and mergers? Do you have any insights on how that happened?
Well, I mean, I think it's just community culture, right? So it's the culture of what's been out there in the community, and it's not like it's not common. Like, I think probably for every 20, 30 tries of partnerships, maybe one takes. It's not like it's very common. And Josh Showman is a huge advocate of it, and he keeps pushing. And if you describe the real benefits that you're going to take, or that you're going to get from these partnerships, from either partnerships with other municipalities or other counties, if you can describe how those programs are going to be affected and benefit, it's an easy thing to do. But it's just a lot of people don't want to listen, or don't want to partner, or there's just too much other stuff going on. I mean, people live busy lives, and everyone in government is busy. So it's just hard to kind of get through sometimes. But I think in Southeast Wisconsin, there's a couple of regional entities that really kind of drive that. One is M7. It's like a seven county partnership that really tries to drive business and sharing of resources within this area. And then you do have people like Josh who just, they throw those ideas out there like, hey, what can we all partner with? And then you get a county like Waukesha County that says, oh, well, we have this aquatic invasive species program that you guys are also doing, or we have a health department that we can be the champion of, the finances and kind of everything we're doing there. but then you guys can still benefit by providing some services as well. So a lot of it's throwing it out there, seeing what sticks, and then hoping that, it kind of drives change within the community.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I like, you're bombarding me with these great terms like M7, sounds really cool. I don't know what that is. Aquatic invasive species. It's a favorite question of the show to ask, what is your favorite county program and why?
Yeah, we don't have sheep grazing like Fort Sask.
Epic.
But I'm totally biased, but I think the AIS program is my favorite county program. Totally biased, but it's a great eye opener for communities around the Great Lakes to realize how precious of a freshwater resource they are. Many people around here take water for granted, and learning about things like aquatic invasive species gives the general public something to kind of grab hold of, something tangible that signifies the importance of our water. I know I'm biased, but the AIS program, it opened my eyes to public partnerships. When I started as a freshwater biologist for Washington County, it was just a part-time program. And because we were able to write grants for our neighboring Waukesha County, we were able to make the position full-time and hire that team of 7 interns to educate people about the importance of invasive species, which is like totally random, but cool.
Wow.
And
So cool.
yeah, and it led to the new discovery of new invasive species too, which is pretty interesting.
Brett, I was thinking, preparing for this, that the last time you and I saw each other in person was about a year ago, a little over a year ago. We have our annual ResourceX Summit, and before COVID hit, this is our once a year opportunity to bring the community together and really celebrate wins. You, on behalf of Washington County, were one of 5 organizations who were recognized for achieving greater than 10% resource reallocation of your budget, which was completely awesome. And then you went on to make a presentation about an innovative approach called your fiscal endurance exercise. And I'd love for you to share, especially for those who weren't at the conference last year, what was your inspiration for that exercise, and where did you take it from the summit last year?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, the fiscal endurance exercise was really interesting, and that was totally inspired by, well, it was kind of funny because I had just gotten done with my Master's of Public Administration capstone class, and then ResourceX actually held a leadership cohort, right? And this was about maybe 6 months before the summit. So you guys held that leadership cohort, and it was your first one, and I was super inspired by it. But during it, you guys had us do another capstone, and I was like, I just got done doing a capstone for my grad school program. I got to do another capstone. But this one was really cool because it was applicable to real life. And I talked a lot with Josh, our county administrator at the time, now county executive. And he actually, we were talking about what we should do for capstone for this leadership cohort. And we were thinking like fleet management plan, some really practical things that just had to, like chores that had to get done around the county, basically. But we were talking in his office, and on his whiteboard, he had written, "My goal is to make Washington County the first in Wisconsin with a model for long-term fiscal sustainability and endurance, with prioritized quality services for our citizens, where employees want to work, people want to live, and businesses want to grow." And he's like, "This is my goal. Like, this is what I want." And I was like, "Oh, let's go off that," And so we kind of took that fiscal sustainability and endurance, and we ran with it. And so in further conversations, we went through and started talking about how are we going to make our county fiscally sustainable? What happens when we hit a recession, or when something goes wrong and we can't take out debt and we have nothing left to use for, to run our county services? And so we ended up thinking, okay, let's use the PVB tool. Let's get department heads together, get them in the tool, and show them what the tool can actually do by putting them in a situation, a fiscal endurance exercise of repeating the 2008 recession. So when the crash happened. And in doing that, what happened, it was super interesting. We had basically we had like a month of department preparation where they would kind of get an email saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have a simulation. We didn't tell them what it was, but we had them get into the tool and kind of work around in the PBB tool, getting used to it. And then they all came in one day and we said, okay, here's the situation. It was almost like when you do, you know how cities do like the emergency drills where everyone gets in a room and there's like a tornado that hits over here and then there's a fire that hits over here. It was like that, except it was just with our fiscal scenario. And the fiscal scenario was this 2008 crisis. So we ended up showing them kind of what that looked like. And basically every year starting our budget, we had about $1 million gap to fill anyway. Well, this was saying now we have about 1 million more than that to fill. So what are we going to do? And what tools are we going to use to do that? So we strategically placed all of our department heads at tables. It was really funny because we had done some background research on kind of people's personality types. Like we did this true colors test, which describes people as a color, and then so we put them we put different colored people at the same table so they would have different kind of ways to think, and so we were kind of hoping that that would spark some conversation and stuff, and it sure did. So they all started talking, and then using the resource alignment tool from PBB, I had printed out packets of where everyone's programs sat in quartiles for each of the basic program attribute questions. So basically what we did is we asked them the basic program attribute questions that you can find on the RAD tool or the resource alignment tool. And in asking them those questions, they could see exactly where their programs lined up. So they could say, oh, this is a quartile 4 in my area, but in, like, for instance, the DA has like the DARE program, the Drug Assistance Reviews Education Program. Well, they're doing the DARE program, and the police could also be doing the DARE program. They also have an education and outreach person who isn't doing that program. So, you had people talking about those kinds of partnerships within the communities, and it really started to break down the silos of departments. And you had, by the end of it, we had like the medical examiner getting up from his table and like running to the DA and talking to him about, how we can partner services. And it was just really cool. So that exercise was awesome. And it was pretty successful. What happened at the end was everyone wrote up a white paper basically describing, in what did you learn from this? And in a fiscal scenario, a fiscal crisis, what would you do? And so they kind of took what they learned from it and wrote what they would do in that scenario. Now, we did a caveat. Obviously, we're not going to use this to like defund your program, or like, we're not going to take your department and be like, oh, now you said you could get rid of this, now we can get rid of it. No, we didn't do that at all. But it was something when a recession hits or when COVID hit, we actually had a starting point to look at programmatically what departments were doing and how we can just start to have conversations around how important each program is. So it was really, really interesting to have those white papers handy when COVID hit, especially when everything was still unknown.
Epic. I mean, just a couple of detailed questions within. You're talking about two different department heads collaborating, racing over towards one another. Something must have taken place between you invited them into the room, and maybe there's some degree of skepticism or healthy degree of skepticism. We'll leave it at that. How did they end up playing ball? Like, was it the nature of the exercise that you set up in the scenario? I mean, it seems really cool from a cultural standpoint.
It was really cool from a cultural standpoint. And to be honest, when I came into the finance department, one of my main tasks was like, hey, let's see how this PBB program is going to kind of get rekindled within the organization. Because we had it going really well in 2018 or in 2017 maybe. And then in 2018, it started to die down. We had a lot of department head turnover. And when a department head came on, they're like, PBB is one part of their job that it's just a hard one to kind of grasp when you're trying to wrap your head around everything else. So part of so one thing I did when I first came on was to get all the department heads in the tool. Literally went to their office and went through the tool with them. Just said, here's your programs, here's what you're doing. How does this look to you? You had department heads who had way too small scale programs, like 1% of their year was marked as a program, and it's like, okay, we can scale that up to be more of an appropriate sized program. So we kind of I went through with department heads and kind of kindled the tool at first, and then it was kind of, oh, that's just Brad, I don't know why this aquatic invasive species guy, Aquaman, is coming into my office to tell me how to do my budget. So it was kind of like, okay, well, I didn't know about the tool just as much as they didn't. So it was a really good, I mean, the fact that I wasn't like your typical finance person and I was kind of coming in and learning with them was super important. And I think that helped grow the culture a lot within our county. But then, I mean, yeah, there was still definitely a healthy degree of skepticism when the fiscal endurance exercise happened. There was a lot of grumbling, but a huge part of it was just the communication that we used. So Josh was a champion in letting me communicate through him, basically. So I had written up emails to send out throughout the couple months before the exercise that I would write up and send him, and he would send out on my behalf saying, look, you guys, as department heads, he would communicate to them about what had to be done. And at their department head meetings, they would talk about, okay, this exercise is coming up. Are you guys in the tool? Are you used to using it? Do you know how to use it? So that communication piece was huge.
Well, I love the idea of the exercise. There is another book that we talked a lot about this year called The Art of the Long View by Peter Schwartz, and it's about scenario planning, and it literally is like, try to envision some sort of set of circumstances, just like an actor taking the stage, and play into it. What would you do? And the idea is, you're never going to get it perfect. Planning for the future is very hard. No one would have predicted COVID, at least how it's played out, maybe. But if you come up with plausible possibilities, and then when something happens that's kind of close to a scenario you planned for, you've got something of a playbook to take advantage of, even if it requires some tweaking. You're not starting from ground zero. It gives me some ideas for exercises to even think about 2021 for some of our organizations, and using their PBB data to envision, COVID's still here, COVID's gone. In either case, what happens? What are we going to do? I did want to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to wind that back to even, you did fiscal endurance modeling the 2008 recession. Even GFOA, in our talks with Shane Kavanaugh, I mean, we're dusting off papers that we wrote in 2008. And we're like, this is close to what we need right now, but it's not exactly it, but it's good. You'd see that on GFOA's website. I was going to ask you, I think you had your fiscal endurance white papers, and then all of a sudden we're talking, Brad, it's March, April, you're updating financial data rapidly. What was going on, and kind of bring me up to speed for how you started to deal with COVID with the fiscal endurance data and some of the other work that you were doing.
Totally. Yeah. And to go along with kind of what you were saying with the art of the long view and kind of planning ahead. I mean, so to be clear with everyone else, I was never an expert in the PBB tool. Like, this took, like, Stuart needs a huge shout out for being patient with me as a user, just a regular department user. Stuart made my life so easy. He was like super patient and would guide me through how to use the RAD tool and how to basically use the tool so I could teach other people from the county. I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was just something I had to learn really fast. But one thing I wish I would have done more is look at so basically what I feel like the physical endurance exercise was a really detailed look into insights, like insights in the PBB tool, but we just used a specific scenario to put the insights towards. So like now that I've been working in it for 3-4 weeks, it's like these insights are basically what we were doing. Like we were basically taking a scenario and applying like what we saw the future of these programs with. So using that insight tool, I mean, that's where you are going to start to see changes or the ability to change in your organization. You're going to see what can we do, and it just begs the question, what if we do this? And it's not like you have to do anything, but it asks those kind of high level questions that start conversations, and that's where you see those barriers break down. I really think, I mean, that's where you see department heads starting to talk to each other, or even communities starting to talk to each other. You start to see West Bend and Washington County. So West Bend is the seat of Washington County, starting to talk about sharing a medical person and having an on-site health clinic. And that's just one of the partnerships that also came out of this. So sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent to your question, but but you kind of had said, or you were asking about how we kind of used the tool during COVID.
True.
Okay.
But you're good. I mean, as you're starting to get into those insights, that is spot on. They're ideas. They're things you could do to alter the future trajectory of a particular program given a set of circumstances, and that's exactly what you were doing. I wanted to get into, there was a moment, Brad, where we're noticing you're updating financial data on a rapid basis. So much so that if we rewound the tape to 2016, Mike Seaman had a conference presentation at the summit, and it was called ResourceX Mutations, where we're like, this is odd behavior in the tools. Maybe it's productive. What can we learn from it? And this is correlated to a mutation. Brad's doing weekly updates in the tools. Tell us what was going on and how it related to COVID and everything.
Yeah, well, mutation is a good word for somebody who spends a lot of time underwater. But yeah, when I was in Washington County, COVID hit, and this I had a conversation with some people from PBB. I think Chris, you and Stuart we kind of talked about what and you had some workshops about what to do with our data during COVID. And during COVID, being in my position, I was tasked with a lot of things, including making sure we had a contact tracing team, and we had reallocating people's times to do local elections, because as probably happened in a lot of communities, in April, when the election came, most of the people who normally volunteered for those elections didn't volunteer because of COVID, and they were usually of an age or a ability where they were more susceptible to getting the virus, and there was so much unknown. So we ended up having to reallocate a bunch of workers in Washington County to do other tasks, and whether it be like the elections or just ordering and distributing personal protective equipment to different hospitals or dentist office or nursing homes. We had to do all kinds of new stuff, and we don't have trying to run lean government. We don't have people to just do that, especially when like half of our workforce is working from home. So what my task was to basically figure out, and logistically, how to get people who are doing one job to basically be able to do the other job while not sacrificing any county services. And so what I ended up doing was using the PBB tool and making a COVID reassignment program in administration. And then every week, as people were reassigned to either elections or PPE reassignments or things like that, contact tracing, I would put them in the tool as that COVID reassignment. And then we were able to actually take that each week and measure out. So it was going into the tool weekly and updating it. And then we were able to measure out how much time and money actually it cost us to reallocate these workers to do these other jobs. In doing so, we were able to just, really measure it out and have that number basically saying, this is what we're spending on human capital getting paid to do jobs that aren't their jobs. And it came in really handy when, some of that CARES Act stuff came out. So it was really a really good thing that we did at the beginning of the project, at the beginning of COVID.
It is inspiring. Liz, I maybe an idea is we'll share it on a blog, but I know Brad had some of that data, and it was amazing to see positions being reallocated to take over for election coverage, or some of the contact tracing work that was taking place. I even recall it was either you or Josh talking about how, with the way that you've been able to manage your resources, you had more contact tracing taking place than perhaps even some other neighbors who had more resources, which is awesome. And just a great way to envision, all of these tools are pretty simple, and it's measuring, hey, you only have 100% of Brad's time, and where does that get reallocated, and is there some capacity now that you're not working in COVID, and can we reallocate it toward the new need that emerges? It was really ingenious how you did that, and inspired all of us. So that's definitely cool.
Well, and I can't take credit for it. I mean, it was all conversations with Washington County, really innovative people at Washington County like Josh and Aaron Dahl, and you guys. I mean, you guys are always like coming up with these great ideas, and it just takes somebody to run with them,
And maybe that gets me, you're on this side now. And I say that loosely, we all, to use your biology term, we have a symbiosis in our ecosystem, and we benefit one another, we learn from one another, and that's the idea. But as a super user, I was really intrigued with what are you most excited to share to other organizations now that you have the ability to talk to Roswell, you have the ability to talk to Benicia, coast to coast. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely like being a super user for a municipality is definitely a unique experience, because you're juggling your budget. You're probably juggling like your budget year, and then you're juggling your capital budget, and then you get about 2 to 3 months to probably dive into PBB, because at least that's what I kind of did, because I was not associating programs with the line item budget, right? So as a super user, and what I'm kind of learning now is that it can be way more integrated, and as you said, symbiotic with each other than I kind of thought at first. So it was kind of a tough thing to start out doing, but once I started to spend some time in the tool, you start realizing how awesome it really is and how powerful it really is, especially with communication with your board, with your department heads, and your community. So one thing that I could share as a super user is the present tool and the rad tool, how important those things are in communicating and answering the question, what do we do? Really, I mean, that's what people want to know. And I love the example, and Chris, you'll have to remind me what community it was where they went in. I think it was in California. They went in and they took the budget book out and they said, hey, find this program in the budget. Do you want to share that story really quick? Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Thank you. Oh man, we're 42 minutes in, and that's the first time that's happened. That's a bonus.
That's pretty good.
Yes, it was Benicia, and yeah, you're right. The exercise was exactly how you portrayed it. A council meeting. They had a citizen there, and it was like a game show. It's hilarious. They asked the citizen, "Hey, is there anything in particular that our city does that you've always been interested in? What we're spending on it, or how it's resourced?" And the woman was talking about an after-school program that she takes her kid to, and she's like, I'm always so appreciative that this is a resource for me. I depend on it. It adds value to my quality of life every single day. My child loves it. And she's said, yeah, let's use that as an example. Let me see how much it costs. So they gave a staff member in Benicia the budget book and said, can you locate this program? You are the expert. You know our data better than any in the budget book. And then so that person started to pile through it. And the first question was, man, I think I'm vaguely familiar with this program, but can you tell me what department it is? Is it library? Is it Parks and Rec? Where does this program belong? And so you immediately came to understand, wow, the budget book is organized in a certain way that you have to follow a path to even get there. Once we learned that it was a library program, you go to the library department budget book page, and it's filled with line items. There was no way on earth, and that was the point of the exercise. Even given the budget book and someone who knows how to navigate it, you weren't going to find it. Versus Mario pulled up Present PBB, just started typing in words that the citizen was using, after school, kid, activities, and was able to search around it, pinpoint the program about 5 minutes, and say, here it is. This is what you're looking for. It was powerful. It was well done exercise and proved a point.
That's really cool. I think that that story is inspiring, and that's kind of what made me really excited to join the ResourceX team. Is just it's a truly transformative tool. It's innovative, and it takes innovation to change local government to what it needs to be. It's necessary to take a new approach to how the budget works, and I'm super excited now. So it was fun using the tool in Washington County, but I'm super excited now to take this tool and be able to work with other departments across the country. It's really exciting stuff.
That's awesome. And maybe that it's a segue to kind of a zoom out question. And but you're passionate about local government, and that has come through in our work with you over the years. And the question is, if you could impact one change in local government, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question. Oh my gosh. Well, I was thinking about this recently, and I would want to enable everyone from every community to realize the impact of their vote at the local, state, and federal level. And this will come around to kind of relating to PBB too, but mostly at the local level. So I think right now it seems really difficult to run for local government, and it doesn't seem accessible to anyone who feels like they could be a good representative of their community. It feels like some people only know the ins and outs of the system. Only some people know that, and that makes the structure less equitable, especially at the local level. If there were more competition for positions like alderperson, clerk, trustee, etc., I think we'd see better thriving communities. And it would be, I have some ideas for this. So Chris, we can talk about after, but I definitely have been thinking about this for a while. And it kind of happened because my brother-in-law, I was having a conversation during the past presidential debate. And my brother-in-law was like, he's fed up. He lost his job to COVID. He was in the music industry, ran a light and sound company for big musicians, and he lost it. It's like, there's no performances right now. So he was like, he was looking at his ballot, his mail-in ballot, and he's like, I don't know what a county clerk does. Like, there's only one person on the ballot every year. I have no idea who they are, and I have no idea who it is. He's like, I'm going to start a write-in campaign for county clerk. So I was thinking, well, if he doesn't know what it is, he's a smart guy, and he's very in the community. He's very, active all the time. And so I was like, okay, more people need to know what a county clerk does. If he doesn't know, who does? So yeah, so I think that if I could change local government, it would be that, and I think that would help make the local government experience more representative of the communities that it should be representing. I mean, especially here in Milwaukee, we see that all the time. It's like a certain family knows how to do it. They know the deadlines. They know how to kind of run the system, and then they just keep doing it. And so you get communities that are totally misrepresented by people who just are kind of gaming the system a little bit. Wow. So, yeah.
I was not expecting that. That's fascinating. My mind went all sorts of different places. Imagining the tools, if someone was searching like an elections program, election security, something like that, and next to it, you could also have click this button to file your petition to get on the ballot and run. And you can run this program.
Oh yeah, no, I have. I've been thinking about this for a few months, so I've kind of been trying to think it through a little bit. But also, I mean, like back to kind of a PBB mindset. Working with different local government positions, I've seen the silos in local government, and so I feel like one other thing that if I could impact local government, and I know this is kind of your typical answer that you learn in grad school, but it'd be to break down those silos. I feel like, especially with some of the more traditional departments, you still have these silos that are built up, and they don't talk to each other, and they do the same thing. They use the same systems, or they implement the same system twice just to do the same thing. Like the thing that comes to mind, I don't know if it's true in all organizations, but you think about like a radio system, right? Like you have like your local municipality using a radio system, and then you have your county using a different radio system, but they're in the same geographic area covering the same radio waves. Why are you doing two separate things? So there's a lot of cost savings in there.
Love it. Brad, I'll end on one question, then we have some write-in questions that came from the audience. I want to make sure we have some time to get to, including any time if any of the participants want to ask you some questions live from our studio audience. But before I get to the last question, man, I just got to say, I mean, listening to you in this interview and some of the stories that you're talking about, it really is inspiring. You guys have been able to think about this beyond just the tools of PBB, but really where you're trying to head with all of this work, and create a positive impact on your community. You're even causing you to rethink how citizens participate in the elections and running for office. I see it becomes more clear to me every time we talk why Washington County was able to achieve what it did. And on top of that, man, it makes me think about Josh and Jamie and Margie and Kathy and Aaron and your whole team out there. So just wanted to give everybody in Washington County a shout out. And for everyone listening, you might not have heard of Washington County, but you should. They're an incredible organization doing some great things. Brad, maybe if I could end on this one, what quote inspires you in work and in life?
Ooh, that was okay. That's a tough one. I'm just gonna go with the classic: love your neighbor as yourself. It's the golden rule. So you gotta just love the people around you, and I could think of 4 more, but I think that's the one I'd have to go with because it's just simple and to the point.
But isn't that the classic partnership? If you live by love your neighbor as thyself, and then you go to Counties Without Borders, your neighbor, and you start to create networked enterprises and partnerships, it all makes sense, man.
Precisely.
That's your DNA.
Nice. Well, hey, I gotta echo your sentiment to the Washington County team. I mean, without them and without the chance they gave me coming from my random background, it's just amazing what they've done and how they've helped me grow. And now I'm super excited to join the ResourceX team. I mean, you guys I remember being at the PBB Summit in Denver and thinking, wow, it would be really cool to work with these guys more because they're just so inspiring and they're constantly being innovative. And so it's a real honor to be in this interview and to be part of your team. I mean, I'm really grateful.
Thanks, Brad. We're so happy to have you here and impart your experiences to the rest of the entire community. I have 2 questions that came in. One is super important, and the other one's kind of also important. And I did prepare a background for this. Brad, do you recognize this place?
Oh, that looks like a typical bar. Where is that?
The question, maybe this will help, is what is your favorite ingredient in German nachos?
Well, the cheese, of course.
This is the braising pan.
Oh,
A West Bend original restaurant.
oh my gosh, the Braising Pan, man. Yeah, I haven't been there in a while, but that's a good spot. And German nachos, man, you can't go wrong with good German nachos.
Hey,
Nice and
hey.
cheesy.
And second question, more serious. Heading back, you brought up the leadership cohort,
Oh yeah.
the capstone work, and the question was around that. What was the value of the cohort to you in your role, and would you recommend it to others?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't recommend the leadership cohort enough. The leadership cohort was honestly like career changing in the fact that it was like working through it. The team who put that leadership cohort together did an amazing job. They really were inspiring, and all of you guys. I mean, that was kind of my first introduction to ResourceX, where I was like, holy cow, these guys are on top of their game, and they're gonna make changes in the world. Like that was literally what I thought. And so they challenged me. You guys challenged me to um, think beyond what I was doing and really kind of think further. And that's where the physical endurance exercise came from. So that really brought the physical endurance exercise together, which brought the culture together and helped the culture kind of get back into the PBB mindset and kind of that future thinking mindset. And I would definitely recommend it for others.
We're gonna. I was just talking to Eric Heck this morning, and I know he has some plans to. We're gonna have another offering, so we'll be publishing some news on how anybody can get involved in that as well. But thanks for that perspective.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was also just to say too, I mean, it also opened my eyes to other communities like KCMO. Like, so if people don't know what the leadership cohort was, it was basically people from different communities around the country came together in a leadership cohort that was a virtual learning experience. And it was just like a leadership management, techniques and how to run an organization and how to use the PBB tools to be a leader within your organization. And it was just really cool. And yeah, so I still keep in touch with people who I met in that cohort, even though I've never met them in real life, but yet we keep in touch.
Very cool. It's like cohorts. It's like this, the Resource Exchange. Man, there is something really powerful. It's like a band of brothers and sisters of being able to go through these experiences together and build community when you're really trying to do important, compelling work. Very cool.
Agreed.
Well, Brad, thanks so much. Thanks for being on this podcast or this webinar series with us and sharing some of your experiences overall. And man, just thanks so much for being on our team and being a part of this community and contributing like you do. We're going to accomplish some awesome things together, and this is just the beginning. So month 1, congratulations.
Yeah, man, I'm super happy to be here. Couldn't be more grateful.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to wrap up our next series. I believe, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, it will be in a couple of weeks, and we're bringing on Shane Kavanaugh from GFOA. We've talked about his book. So if Brad's the Aquaman of local government finance, we'll have to find out and ask Shane. He has some awfully Clark Kent-esque glasses, but we'll see where he falls on the superhero spectrum. Thanks a lot, everybody. That's a wrap, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. See you later.